I'm Alyce McKenzie, and welcome to What's a Preacher to Do, a series of brief interviews sponsored by the Perkins Center for Preaching Excellence at SMU. We interview scholars from a variety of disciplines, asking them the question, what is an insight from your area of expertise that could help a preacher putting a sermon together in these tough times? And this afternoon, my guest is Dr. Carrie La Ferle. She is the Marriott Endowed Professor of Ethics and Culture at the Temerlin Advertising Institute at the Meadows School of the Arts at Southern Methodist University. That's quite a mouthful.
It is.
But I got it right, I think. So welcome. We're so glad to have you with us this afternoon.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This is wonderful.
Sure. So the question is, what's a key insight from your expertise that you think could be helpful to preachers in these tough times?
Wow. Yes. We could use insight in all areas right now. Parenting from home, and teaching from home, and working from home, and preaching from home. I think, in advertising, our number one area that we always start with is what is the consumer like? What are their needs, their wants, their values? And how would we get our brand to be invited into their life? How can we make our brand important that they want to invite the brand in? Because there's so many different brands they can choose from. So I think in terms of preaching, it's the same idea. What you need to think about, what's your congregation, what are their needs, wants, and values, and how has that maybe changed since when you were in person, face-to-face meeting on Sundays in light of COVID, but even as we go forward and things start to go back to so-called normal, are there troubles now with jobs and money? What about the family members at home that are potentially thinking divorce now because they've had a really hard time living at home together?
Right.
So I just think you really need to get to know your audience, even if you've known them for 20 years, really find out now what are their needs, their wants, and how can you help that in your sermon on Sundays?
I've noticed a shift. I like to watch commercials. Sometimes I'll watch them twice if they're really good.
Nice.
But I've noticed a shift from commercials that kind of emphasize, hey, your life story is about being more attractive and having more freedom and having more security, and people on beaches and in luxury cars and such. But now it seems like maybe it's because those things aren't as important now or as possible, that advertising, do you think that, well, you would know better than I would, but is advertising intentionally becoming a little more somber over the past few months?
Most definitely. It's funny you say that, because actually this week there's been talk about a shift going away from being so somber, so serious, maybe adding a little more humor into ads again, because we're sort of maybe seeing different, states and that pulling out of this a bit. But most definitely the advertisers have been actually really quick to either pull ads that were a little too frivolous, and also to somewhat jump on the bandwagon, but in a helpful way, saying we're a part of the community. How can our brand help you? Car companies have said, you don't need to pay for extended periods of time. Credit card companies have done the same thing. We're extending lots of credit. Brands have been saying that. Or how can we help clean your home? If you can't get hand sanitizer, maybe you can use alcohol with aloe gel and mix those together. So you've seen a lot of creativity, but I think a real sensitivity to what consumers are experiencing, so that they can make their brand more of a value to the consumers while helping their new life situation.
Right. It's all about that, inviting that product into your life story. And that I read someplace that advertisers are trying to show the soul of their brand. And so it seems like that's what we preachers need to do too, as we encourage people to invite our good news into their life story.
Right. And I think that's what's so important. Some of the marketing 101 about brands is always know your brand. So as much as you want to know your consumer and their needs and wants and values, you need to know your brand or your church or your what your goal is in your sermon. And you don't want to stray from that. You don't want to just be a jump on the bandwagon, because it's not authentic.
Well, let me ask this. If you could pick one positive kind of thing that you think has come about from people preaching at home and services online, what might that be?
So I think it's an opportunity for each church to think about that it's not just maybe your congregation that's tuning in, but it could be an easy way to now connect people that you can continue to connect with forever, by now having an online opportunity as well.
Right. And I want to end by thanking you and also giving a plug for the book that Dr. La Ferle and our colleague, Dr. Wes Allen, are coming out with, I think in about 3 months. We'll see.
Yes, well, we'll see, but definitely coming out, and
Yes.
hopefully people will enjoy the connection between sort of advertising techniques that we use and how you might be able to apply them to preaching and getting the word out.
Right. And it's called Preaching and the 30-Second Commercial. And it
Yes.
will be published by Westminster John Knox Press. So we're excited about that. And thank you so much for being our guest this afternoon. And preachers, be on the lookout for the next installment of What is a Preacher to Do?